Welcome back. Analysts remain unsure about the future of South Africa's business interests in Nigeria. Several companies have had run-ins with Nigerian authorities in recent months, the most publicized being the multi-billion-dollar fine imposed on MTN. But Sun International, Standard Bank, Stanbic and Tiger Brands have also clashed with authorities over policy. Well, Sophia Adengo, our correspondent in Abuja, has been taking a look at the general climate for South African firms in Nigeria. She joins us now. Sophia, good afternoon. Is it peculiar that South African companies appear to be targeted, or is this purely incidental?
Well, you know, as you have spoken, analysts have said that historically Nigeria and South Africa have always maintained a really great bilateral economic relationship. And in recent months, you're seeing an upswing in those relations, especially with South Africa being the top foreign investor here in Nigeria. But you are right, there have been a few rocky bumps, especially in 2015, where you saw MTN coming to the forefront and having to be confronted with a fine of almost $5 billion for a security breach. But having said that, you know, Nigeria and South Africa are looked at largely on the continent as, economic giants and also giants in their sub-region. So for the two economies to come together and work together is not a far-reaching testament. There are these isolated incidents in which many of South Africa's investors have come and not flourished. But if you look at the numbers, over 100 South African multinational companies have made Nigeria their home. And within these relationships, you have seen a growth for Nigeria in infrastructure and also in revenue. Say, for example, with MTN, almost $300 million invested in just, in what they call taxes here or licensing fees, as well as almost $1 billion by MTN invested here in Nigeria. So that has been a welcoming, prospect here in Nigeria. On the downside, Jacob Zuma, while he was, partnering with President Goodluck Jonathan, had more or less like a 5-year lull in which not very much was encouraged. But there seems to be a complete turnaround during this President Buhari administration in which South African business is indeed welcome, as well as other businesses. But there are these, isolated incidents, and many believe as a result of the dominance that South Africa has in these markets. Nigeria is a large market in which South African companies have come in and taken over in the banking sector, telecommunication sector, and retail. So, Devin, indeed, there is an environment of competition, but I wouldn't say that there is a peculiar situation. I think it really is just smoothing out the economic relations between these two giant countries.
Yeah, I suppose what also bears testament to that is at the same time there's been celebration and fanfare from both sides over this direct route from Johannesburg to Abuja. So the question then emerges at the time of this tension: how do we reconcile that new route and the celebration of that route with the company run-ins?
Well, you do bring up a good point. On a business level, analysts have said this is really a welcome, business-wise, this is really what they would like to see in terms of South Africa and Nigeria putting aside any other issues and providing a route or a gateway in which both economies can actually flourish in these parts. The big question is, even if this route has been established, will Nigerians be able to freely access South African markets? And will South Africa be able to freely access these, Nigerian markets as a result of this portal that has been opened? On more of a political nature, there is the idea that South Africa really has been, focused primarily on repatriating a lot of its revenue, that very little is extended to Nigerians and the growth of Nigerians, some would believe. And others believe that Nigeria has primarily been exporting, to South Africa, and South Africa has gained the upper hand because primarily South Africa provides, manufactured goods and a way in which their goods can be consumed, whereas Nigeria provides primarily oil to South Africa. Almost 95% of the export is oil-based. So there are those questions to ask. But back to the route that has been opened here in Abuja between South Africa and Johannesburg, and Abuja, you can see that there perhaps is an opening up largely from both countries for movement, especially for trade enhancement as a result of these developments. Devin.
And then finally, Sophia, based on the strength of the Nigerian economy, Sun International saying they are committed to the country, I would imagine that that logic applies to other companies as well.
Well, you don't have to be an economist to actually realize, living here in Nigeria, that any foreign direct investment is welcome. Nigeria is feeling the strain of having to diversify from leaning or largely depending on oil revenues, with those oil revenues seeing a complete fall in the international markets. They are looking at other options and also hoping to partner closely with other nations, including South Africa, in increasing that, that investment, not only in the investment, but the revenue that is received, that would help this economy sort of charter a trajectory of positivity, as opposed to what has been seen now with the naira being devalued against the dollar. But in the long term, it is hoped that South Africa and Nigeria would find this equilibrium, a balance in which these two giants are opening themselves up. There was talk of free trade zones for the two countries. And let me also say to you, Devin, that the South African Binational Commission and also the South African Nigerian Chamber of Commerce are working really hard to see that trade relations between the two countries do not hit a snag, that indeed there is a course charted forward and ways in which traders and business people in Nigeria can also partner very easily with those of South Africa. Devin.
All right, thanks very much indeed for those insights there. Sophia Adengo coming to us live from Abuja.